checking to see if I'm live. Where am I? Okay, I should be live about now, and I am. Okay, so I was having a conversation with somebody a couple of days ago, and I have some massive targets for 2025. 2024, I took my foot off the pedal quite a bit, and this year I'm back, I'm fired up, I'm ready to go. And I was speaking to this particular person who I speak to regularly and let them know this is what I'm aiming for this year. And they asked me the question, how are you going to get there? And I said, I'll tell you when I've done it. Because here's the thing, right? I have a plan. I know that I will work the plan and I will do the things and I will trust and put faith in the plan. But sometimes the plan just leads to something else, right? Sometimes when we're executing a particular strategy, it points us in a different direction. It takes us in another way, on another road or whatever, or it opens opportunities for us that we didn't see before. And so I think back to all of the times that I've had these massive quantum leaps in my businesses or in my business, and I've known there's a certain, I guess, set of circumstances that are always the same. And that is that I am crystal clear on what I want to achieve. And I set a really strong intention around the outcome that I want to achieve. And I know in my knower that I'm going to be able to achieve it. And that all comes from me testing. It's like, oh, do I believe this is possible? And it's like, what about this? Or what about this? A lot of the times when I have been a little bit quiet and kind of in my own head too much, I tend to shoot too low and then I'm bored and I'm wondering like, what is going on? It's like, oh, you forgot to dream big. And so I go back and it's like, okay, so what do I really want to go for? And then I just go for that. And that suddenly feels very aligned. And suddenly I feel so much more engaged in the process and excited about it. So if you've got a big vision, a big goal for this year, I want you to really check in on the vision itself or the goal itself or the target itself. And does it excite you? Can you see yourself on the other side of it? You don't need to know the how. The how will reveal itself when the intention is set. And so, can you see yourself there? Can you see yourself on the other side of it? And if you can't, can you dial it back potentially a little bit, even if it's just for a minute or a week, so that you can fully get behind it, set those intentions, and then start taking action? Because the action that we do from that place of being inspired is what shakes the world, right? It's what shakes the world and has people suddenly starting to pay attention to us. And that intention is all powerful. And my intention for 2025 is to bring day one energy every day. And it has been serving me so, so well. And so that is my intention. I know what I'm selling. I know the outcome that I want to produce for myself and for my clients and what that experience is going to look like. I've got so much clarity on all of that. And I know what I will achieve, and that doesn't move, but the how is flexible. But we need to start somewhere, right? You can't set a vision or a goal or whatever and then just say, okay, now I'm leaving it up to the universe. I mean, some people can. I can't work like that. I've got to I've got to have some sort of say in the how. I need to think about, okay, so what are the ways that I can make this happen? And which are the ways that feel mostly aligned, that feel the most aligned? And then I go about then figuring out how to execute the strategies that feel good to me. And when I'm often racing, I just keep going, right? And so sometimes we'll feel overwhelmed and stuck because we're really stuck in figuring out the how, when sometimes we're not even really clear on the what. And once we get clear on the what, then we can start to play around with the how. And your brain will want to tell you things like, I don't know how, I haven't been able to do it before, and all those things, right? And so I want you to come back and just say to yourself, how do I want it to be? Because that's the perfect jumping off point. How do I want it to be? How do I want this to look? And so for me in 2025, I was really clear about how do I want this to look for me? And for me, the marketing piece was the bit that had to be super, super aligned because the marketing in my business didn't feel aligned. It felt icky. It felt not icky so much. I mean, icky for me, um, probably not icky to anyone else looking at it, but it felt icky to me, and it felt like it wasn't effective. And it wasn't effective because I wasn't aligned to it. I didn't feel like this is exactly how I want to do the thing. And so I just got really clear about what am I no longer doing? What is just not on the table anymore? And then you get to make decisions about how you want it to be. My brain just went to a little place. So I was at karate last night during my second week of training, loving it, by the way, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the ladies that was at training, she said, oh, I didn't come on Wednesday. And she said, and I wasn't sure if I was going to come today. And then all day I was deciding, am I going? Am I not going? And I said to my partner, oh, I really should go. And he said, you don't have to. I'm like, fire his ass. Like, you want somebody that's going to go get your ass to training anyway. So, and she was in this indecisive thing, and she felt great when she got there and had a great training session. I trained with her a bit of the class, and I could see she absolutely had a blast. But it's like this unwavering indecisiveness that can keep us really stuck. It doesn't matter what it's in. And so if you are somebody who is quite indecisive and you worry too much about making a mistake, just know that mistakes are going to pave the road on your way to success. I fail all the time. That is how I create success, by failing and failing forward and failing often and speeding up the process by, failing further forward and fast is what I'm trying to say. So if you are feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like stuck, ask yourself how you want it to be. And so if I go back to my karate lady, it's like, well, how do you want to feel about going to training? And also, like, let's not negotiate with ourselves. As she was talking about this, I'm like, you've got to stop negotiating with yourself. You've got to just go. You've got to just not make it an option. So when I started karate and they're like, oh, you came back. And I'm like, yeah, I said I was coming back. And then last night, again, they're like, oh, you came back again. I'm like, I said I was coming back. When I say I'm in, I'm in. Like I'm here. Like I'm going to be here. Like that's just the reality. It's like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And it's so funny, that each time I turn up, they're like, oh, you came back. I'm like, wow, okay. And that's the thing, right? People get so used to negotiating with themselves and quitting on themselves and not showing up when they really want the outcome, right? So if anyone that's training for anything, right, say you want to run a marathon under 4 hours, you might not want to do those long runs on the weekend, but if you want the outcome, you've got to do those sucky runs. I did that. Marathon training sucked for me. And so, but you can't achieve the outcome without putting in the work. And it doesn't mean the work has to be hard. It doesn't mean it has to be long and the grind and all those things. It doesn't have to be any of those things. It's just got to be aligned, strategic, purposeful, intentional, and working towards the ultimate outcome. So always focus on the outcome. But if you don't know what the outcome is, you've got to figure that out, right? Because when it gets challenging, when it gets to this point where you don't want to, then you're going to have something there that's pulling you forward, right? So for me, as I was thinking, one of the reasons I started like the first week that karate opened up, it's hot, it's daylight savings time. I know that I'm going to be fine to get out and train at that time. And I'm doing that. And why am I doing it now when it's hot and everyone's bitching about the heat? I like it. But because I want this to be embedded, I want this to be a habit by the time winter comes around and it's dark at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and it's pissing down rain and I get a dose of the I don't wanters. There are always strategies that we can use to get ourselves to do the work to achieve the outcome that we want to achieve. I'm always finding ways to develop, yeah, those strategies for myself in my personal life and in my business to get me to do the thing that I want to do. And, you know, I don't think a lot of people think enough about that. They just think, here's the outcome I want, kind of randomly, some sort of arbitrary goal that they haven't really thought about. And then, maybe they have some sort of idea about how they're going to achieve it, but they're not fully committed. And so they might try a few things and they don't work, or they don't work fast enough. And so they lose traction, right? They lose focus for it and then they go and chase the next thing. And so the overwhelm will be dialed up and the feeling stuck will be dialed up if we don't follow through on the simple things that we say that we're going to do. Outcome. What is the outcome that you want to achieve? Know what that is. Make sure that it's your outcome. It's not just some arbitrary goal that looks good on the internet. Like, figure out what you really, really want. And then from there, have an idea of how you're going to achieve it, but also be committed to letting the how be flexible. As I said at the very beginning, when my friend said to me, "How are you going to do that?" I'm like, "I'll tell you how I did it when I do it." And that's the thing, right? I go back to thinking about, marathon training, right? Back in the day, when I was fight training, we used to run as the warm up and it used to kill me. And I used to think I suck as a runner, like I suck. And how I can't even run 3 kilometers. How am I going to run 42.2 kilometers? How am I going to do that when I die doing 3 kilometers? It was, crazy to me. And what I realized, because I remember just happened to be in the old town, and I started the distance thing in your car. What's it called? You know what I'm saying? I was like, okay, so I'm here, and I followed it until I got to the front door of our old dojo. And it's like, okay, so that was 3.2 kilometers. And we used to run it under 10 minutes. And it's like, it's a flat out sprint. So it's not that I was a shit runner. It was that it was hard, and it was designed to be hard. It was meant to be hard, and we were hauling ass the whole time. And having that understanding was so helpful. It's like, oh, I'm going to be running at about half that pace. And, I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew that I wasn't an endurance athlete by any stretch. And I knew that I was going to have strategies in place to be able to do those long runs. My long runs were getting to be like 3 hours on a Sunday. And I would do things like download new playlists of albums that I hadn't listened to forever, like the Rolling Stones was on repeat at one point. And then, I'd be excited to go listen to that playlist, and I kind of knew where I'd be in the run. And there were just lots of things that I would do to make sure that I got it done. I didn't love the process. I didn't love being in it, but I knew what I wanted for the outcome. And I knew that if I wanted the outcome, I was going to have to do these sucky runs. And it's the same in business, right? There are going to be things, although not the same in business, because in business, you actually get to choose the way that feels good to you. So if we were saying that, the outcome is you want to have a X amount of revenue for the year, right? And you felt like in order to achieve that, you had to do a marathon, or, replace marathon with daily live streams or something that you just don't want to do, you're not going to want to do it, right? So you've got to figure out, okay, so how do I want it to be? This is the outcome I want. I know I'm going to have to do some work to achieve the thing. So how do I want it to be? And so for me, it was like, yeah, I'm going to do my podcast. I'm going to get on YouTube. I'm going to kick off YouTube with a 30-day content challenge. I'm going to promote my podcast. I'm going to promote my YouTube at some point. I'm going to have my um, what's it called, intern. She's reaching out, getting me positioned on or placed on different podcasts. Like that was the strategy because I started to think, how do I want it to be? And suddenly my predetermined strategy for Instagram went out the window because it's like, how do I want it to be? I want to write without having to worry about the words being cut off. That's a big thing for me. I love to write. And so it's like, oh, okay. So how does it look? Long form. And you've heard me speak about this before. And I made the decision that I was going to go into long form content because that suits me better. I like it. I enjoy it. It's far more, gives you much more insight to who I actually am than trying to squeeze something into a 1 minute reel. And so how that question is what allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do. So the question was, how do I want this to feel? How do I want this to be? And it was the opposite of everything that Instagram stood for, actually. And it's like, oh, okay. So I'm going to let that go because I know what I want and I'm flexible in the way. But the thing I'm not flexible about with the way is it's got to feel good. It's got to feel aligned. It's got to feel good. And so that is what I have been doing. So think about the outcome. Know that the way that you achieve the outcome will be varied. Some things will work, some things won't, but create some boundaries around what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and then don't make it negotiable. So you're not going to see me this year suddenly decide that I'm going to go all in on Instagram again because I'm getting FOMO about it and other people are talking about Instagram and it's working for them. You're not going to see that unless I change my mind, right? And that's okay. But at the moment, that feels like the last thing that I want. And the goal that I have for the end of 2025 going into 2026 is I want to have everything set up so well. I want to have all of my systems. I want to have focused so well on my YouTube channel and on my podcast that I will not spend a marketing cent in 2026 because everything is going to be self-populated. Everything is going to be through word of mouth. When I achieve a certain level of growth, it's going to continue to grow without me needing to spend that money. And it's not because I don't want to spend the money or I don't want to invest. It's just the goal that I have because that will tell me where it needs to be. So again, so the goal is as of the 31st of December, 2025, I no longer spend any money on marketing. Like that's the goal, right? One of the goals that I have. So how am I going to make that happen? I can't tell you. Like, I know my strategy, I know where I'm focused, but the how is just going to reveal itself more and more as I commit to that process and learn more about it, and things will show up. So don't get overwhelmed with not knowing the how. Don't get overwhelmed with being worried about making the wrong decision because every decision is a good decision. You can make a decision that feels wrong, but it's just offering you contrast. It's just showing you, oh, okay, I don't want to do it that way, or I don't want this, or I don't want that, or that's clearly not going to work for me. You need that contrast to keep us on track, right? And don't see it as a failure. I mean, you can see it however you want, but rather than see it as a failure, potentially see it as guidance, right? It's like, okay, I understand this is not the way that it's meant to be. What else is there? Or satisfy yourself that, it doesn't need just a few tweaks or whatever. And the hardest thing is when you're in the weeds, right? The hardest thing is when you're in it and you're pushing and you're doing the things and everything feels really aligned and everything feels like, yeah, it's working the way that I want it to, except it's not producing results, then you've got to stick with it because the results will come, right? But when you make the decision, okay, I've been at this for months now, nothing is happening, then it's time to try something else, try it in a different way, whatever, right? And that hardest part is where people get stuck and they get overwhelmed because they don't know what they don't know and they're running around trying to figure it out and being reactive a lot of the time. And so that's when you need help. That's when you need the support of somebody who's been there, who can see it from a mile off and be able to guide you and say, this is the thing that you need to do next. This is why this isn't working. This is how about if you tried it like this, or have you thought about this? That's how we move forward, because success isn't about whether you hit it out of the park the first time or not. It's about being smart enough to get the help that you need when the path feels closed. Because if you want that outcome and you're walking along on the path and suddenly it just feels like you can't get past, you can't get over it, under it, around it, because you just can't figure it out because you haven't been there before, the smart thing to do is get support, right? So that they can help you get to the other side. And the dumb thing to do is stay stuck and stay in overwhelm and always go back to reinventing the wheel. It's like, oh, well, that didn't work. So I'm going to have to go and do everything, start again and try something else. Sometimes it's not about starting again. Sometimes it's just about a degree of tweaking, a small percentage change in something that will make a really big difference. And somebody who has a lot of experience is going to be able to see that. They're going to be able to say, yeah, no, I can see why that's not working. We're not doing that anymore. Let's try this instead. Or, yeah, this will work. So you've got to hang in there. And maybe while we're getting this working, let's try these other things at the same time so that you're not obsessing over this thing. Like having the right support along the way is gold. It's critical. So anyway, I'm your girl. If you want to get that support inside of one of my containers, the mastermind is open for enrollment still. We close in about 2 weeks. But the sooner you get started, the sooner we can do your onboarding call. I can get a lot of clarity around your business, start to give you a game plan, and then you'll hit the ground running when we kick off at the end of this month. And FEMPIRE Builders is also open. And if you don't have a high ticket coaching offer and you don't know how to sell it, if you're just getting started, or if you don't have the budget for the mastermind, go and check out FEMPIRE Builders, because the 5K Formula for Coaches live round kicks off this week on Friday. I'm going to open the first module to give you the weekend to go through it. And then we do the first live call, I think next Tuesday. So, go check those out if you want support. If you want me to support you in some capacity in 2025, they are the 2 ways to do it, to get my help. Anyway, that is